The spaceship descended silently through the clouds, its sleek metallic surface shimmering faintly under the moonlight. It was invisible to human eyes, cloaked by advanced technology that bent light around it. The craft hovered for a moment above a vast expanse of farmland, before settling gently in the middle of a cornfield. The night was quiet, save for the distant hoot of an owl and the soft rustling of leaves in the breeze. This part of Montana was remote, with only a handful of houses scattered across miles of open land. It seemed like the perfect place for an alien reconnaissance mission. Inside the ship, Cale stood at the control panel, his sharp blue-gray skin glowing faintly in the dim light. His elongated fingers moved deftly over the controls as he scanned the surroundings. Beside him, Lyra watched the monitors intently, her greenish hue contrasting sharply against the dark interior of the ship. She had been hesitant about coming here, warning Cale repeatedly about the ancient transmissions they had intercepted from Earth. Those messages, sent centuries ago by other alien species who had visited this planet, carried one clear message: do not disturb the humans. But curiosity had gotten the better of Cale. He wanted to see these creatures for himself, to understand why so many others had warned against them. The two stepped out of the ship cautiously, their boots making no sound on the damp soil. The air smelled earthy, filled with the scent of growing crops and wet grass. Around them, the stalks of corn swayed slightly in the wind, creating a soft, whispering noise. Cale tilted his head, listening carefully. For beings so primitive, humans were surprisingly loud. Even now, he could hear faint sounds in the distance: a dog barking, the hum of electricity running through wires, the occasional rumble of a truck driving down a nearby road. They were everywhere, even in places that seemed empty. Lyra glanced at Cale nervously. "We shouldn't stay long," she said softly, her voice barely audible. "If they find us." "They won't," Cale interrupted, though there was a hint of uncertainty in his tone. "We've studied them. They're simple farmers here. What harm can they do?" As if answering his question, a pair of headlights suddenly appeared in the distance, moving slowly along a dirt road that bordered the field. Cale froze, his large black eyes narrowing as he watched the vehicle approach. A pickup truck came to a stop near the edge of the cornfield, and a man stepped out. Jack Monroe, a wiry man in his late 40s with sun-weathered skin and a baseball cap pulled low over his forehead, stared into the darkness. He had seen something strange earlier, a flicker of light hovering above his crops, and now he wanted answers. Jack walked toward the field, shining a flashlight ahead of him. The beam cut through the shadows, revealing rows of corn swaying gently. He didn't notice the two figures standing just a few feet away, concealed by the advanced camouflage of their suits. Cale held up a hand, signaling for Lyra to stay still. He wasn't afraid of being discovered. He knew they could disable Jack's memory if necessary. But something about the man intrigued him. There was a determination in his gait, a stubbornness that reminded Cale of his own people. For several minutes, Jack searched the area, muttering to himself. Finally, he shook his head and turned back toward his truck. As he drove away, Cale let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "He saw us," Lyra whispered urgently. "Or at least, he saw something." Cale nodded thoughtfully. "Yes, he did. But he doesn't know what he saw. Not yet." He looked back at the retreating taillights of the truck, his mind racing. Maybe staying hidden wasn't enough anymore. If humans were going to notice them anyway, perhaps it was time to take a closer look, to learn more about these unpredictable creatures who inspired such fear in the stars. The next morning, Jack Monroe couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He had spent hours lying awake in bed, replaying the events of the previous night in his mind. The strange lights hovering over his cornfield, the eerie silence that followed. It all felt too real to dismiss as a trick of the imagination. When dawn broke, he decided to investigate further. Pulling on his boots and grabbing a cup of coffee, he headed out to the field with his wife, Claire, trailing behind him. Claire was skeptical. "You're probably just tired," she said as they walked through the rows of corn. Maybe it was a drone or some kids messing around. Jack shook his head. No, it wasn't any of that. I've lived here my whole life. I know what I saw. When they reached the spot where Jack had parked his truck the night before, they both stopped in their tracks. The ground was marked with peculiar patterns. Perfect circles burned into the soil, as if seared by an intense heat. The corn stalks within the circles were flattened, their leaves blackened and brittle. Claire knelt down to examine the markings more closely, her brow furrowed in confusion. What could have done this? She asked quietly. Jack didn't answer. Instead, he pulled out his phone and started snapping pictures. Later that day, he uploaded them to social media, adding a brief caption. Something weird happened in my field last night. Anyone know what this is? Within hours, the post went viral. People from all over the country began commenting, some suggesting it was a prank, others speculating about UFOs. A local news station even called Jack, asking for an interview. Meanwhile, Kale and Lyra watched the growing commotion from their hidden ship. Using advanced surveillance equipment, they monitored human reactions to their presence. Kale found it fascinating how quickly information spread among humans, thanks to their interconnected devices. He also noticed how divided they were, some excited by the possibility of extraterrestrial contact, others terrified or dismissive. It was a complexity he hadn't anticipated. Lyra, however, grew increasingly uneasy. This is exactly why we were told not to interfere, she said sharply. Look at what's happening. Their curiosity will only lead to trouble. Kale ignored her warning. Instead, he made a bold decision. That evening, under the cover of darkness, he returned to the field. This time, he didn't hide. As Jack and Claire stood near the edge of the cornfield, discussing whether to call the authorities, a shimmering figure appeared before them. At first, it looked like a distortion in the air, like heat rising off asphalt. Then it solidified into the form of Kale. Jack stumbled backward, nearly dropping his flashlight. Claire gasped, clutching her husband's arm. What? What are you? Jack stammered, his voice trembling. Kale raised his hand slowly, palms outward, in a gesture meant to appear non-threatening. His deep, resonant voice carried a calm authority. I mean you no harm, he said. My people are explorers, like your scientists. We came to observe your world. Claire took a cautious step forward. Why now? Why here? Kale hesitated, choosing his words carefully. Your species has reached a point where you can no longer remain isolated. But there are risks. You must understand, we did not intend to cause alarm. Jack frowned, his initial fear giving way to curiosity. If you're so advanced, why do you need to study us? What could we possibly teach you? Kale tilted his head slightly, as if considering the question. Much more than you realize, he replied cryptically. But beware, your actions may have consequences you cannot foresee. Before they could ask anything else, Kale vanished as suddenly as he had appeared, leaving Jack and Claire staring at the empty field. They exchanged bewildered glances, unsure whether to believe what had just happened. One thing was certain, though, their lives, and perhaps the fate of humanity, had changed forever. Word of Jack and Claire's encounter spread like wildfire. By the next morning, their small town was swarming with reporters, camera crews, and curious onlookers. Among them was Emily Dawson, a young journalist from a nearby city who had driven through the night to get there. She was ambitious and eager to make a name for herself, and this story seemed like her big break. Armed with a notebook, a camera, and a head full of questions, she knocked on the Monroe's door early in the morning. Jack answered, looking tired but willing to talk. Claire stood behind him, arms crossed, clearly uneasy about the attention. Emily introduced herself and asked if she could interview them. Jack hesitated but eventually agreed, inviting her inside. Over coffee, they recounted their experience with Kale, describing his appearance, his calm demeanor, and his cryptic warning. Emily listened intently, scribbling notes and snapping photos of the strange markings in the field afterward. Her instincts told her that this wasn't just another hoax. It felt real. When Emily published her article online later that day, it exploded. Headlines like "Local Farmers Claim Alien Encounter" and "Mysterious Crop Circles Baffle Experts" dominated news feeds. The story reached far beyond Montana, drawing national interest. People began flocking to the area, some hoping to catch a glimpse of the aliens, others convinced it was all an elaborate prank. Local authorities struggled to manage the chaos, setting up roadblocks and urging residents to stay calm. Cale watched the unfolding drama from the safety of his ship. He had hoped his brief appearance would ease human fears, not amplify them. Lyra was furious. "This is what I warned you about," she said, pacing back and forth. "Humans are unpredictable. They don't know how to handle something like this." Cale sighed, rubbing his temples. "I thought transparency would help. Instead, it's made things worse." The situation grew more complicated when local law enforcement got involved. Officers Daniel Hayes and Rachel Brooks were assigned to investigate the claims. Daniel was skeptical, convinced the whole thing was a publicity stunt. Rachel, however, kept an open mind. When they arrived at the Monroe farm, they found Jack and Claire surrounded by reporters. After dispersing the crowd, they questioned the couple thoroughly. Jack repeated his story, while Claire added details about the aliens' warning. Though Daniel remained doubtful, Rachel couldn't ignore the sincerity in their voices. That evening, a group of teenagers decided to take matters into their own hands. Inspired by conspiracy theories and viral videos, they snuck out of their homes and headed toward the cornfield with flashlights and cameras. They weren't alone. Other amateur investigators had the same idea. The quiet countryside buzzed with activity as groups of people roamed the fields, searching for evidence of extraterrestrial life. Unbeknownst to them, Cale and his team were watching closely. When the teenagers stumbled upon the hidden spacecraft, panic set in among the Zorathians. One of the crew members, acting on instinct, emitted a low-frequency pulse designed to temporarily incapacitate intruders. It worked, but not without side effects. Birds fell from the sky, startled deer ran wildly through the woods, and nearby livestock became agitated. The disturbance rippled across the landscape, creating scenes of chaos that locals interpreted as signs of an alien attack. News outlets picked up the story, reporting sightings of alien assaults on wildlife. Fear gripped the nation as rumors of invasion spread. Military forces were mobilized, led by General Marcus Hale, a stern man with years of combat experience. He ordered airstrikes against the suspected location of the alien craft, determined to neutralize the perceived threat. Cale realized too late that his attempt to communicate peacefully had spiraled out of control. What started as a mission of observation had turned into a potential war, one neither side was prepared for. The night sky lit up with the roar of jet engines as military planes soared overhead, their shadows cutting across the moonlit fields. Bombs rained down on the area where Cale's ship was hidden, shaking the ground and sending plumes of dirt and smoke into the air. Inside the craft, the Zorathians scrambled to protect themselves. The advanced cloaking technology that had kept them hidden for so long was no match for the sheer force of the explosions. Alarms blared, and sparks flew from damaged control panels. Cale barked orders to his team, his calm demeanor cracking under the pressure. "We need to move," he shouted, helping Lyra steady herself as the ship shuddered violently. "If we stay here, we're done for." Lyra nodded, her greenish skin pale with fear. "Where can we go?" "They'll follow us wherever we run." Cale didn't answer. Instead, he activated the emergency systems, rerouting power to the cloaking device in a desperate attempt to make the ship invisible again. For a moment, it seemed to work. The bombardment stopped as the humans lost track of their target. But the damage was severe. The ship's propulsion system was crippled, leaving them stranded on Earth. Cale clenched his fists in frustration. He had underestimated humanity's capacity for fear and aggression, and now they were paying the price. As dawn broke, The military forces regrouped, scanning the area for any sign of the alien presence. General Marcus Hale stood in a makeshift command center, poring over maps and satellite images. "Find them," he growled at his subordinates. "Whatever it takes, find them." Meanwhile, Cale and his team slipped out of the wreckage under the cover of darkness. Using portable cloaking devices, they moved silently through the forest, staying just ahead of the search parties. They knew they couldn't fight back, not without risking catastrophic consequences. Their mission had always been one of observation, not conflict. But now, every step felt like a gamble. Back in town, Jack and Claire watched the chaos unfold on television. The once quiet countryside was now a war zone, filled with soldiers, tanks, and helicopters. Reporters speculated wildly about the nature of the alien threat, while frightened residents packed up their belongings and fled. Emily Dawson, the journalist who had interviewed the Monroes, arrived at their doorstep again, this time looking frantic. "You have to do something," she urged, glancing nervously at the commotion outside. "People are scared. They think the aliens are attacking us. But you saw them. You know they're not hostile." Jack rubbed his temples, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. "What am I supposed to do? March into the middle of a battlefield and ask everyone to calm down?" Emily hesitated, then nodded. "Something like that. If anyone can get through to them, it's you. You've seen these creatures up close. You know they're not monsters." Claire stepped forward, her voice firm despite the fear in her eyes. "She's right, Jack. This isn't just about us anymore. Innocent people are getting hurt because of misunderstandings." After a long silence, Jack finally agreed. With Emily's help, he arranged a meeting with General Hale. It wasn't easy. Convincing the military to listen to a farmer during a crisis took some persuasion, but eventually they were granted an audience. As Jack and Claire approached the command center, flanked by armed guards, they could feel the tension in the air. General Hale studied them coldly. "You claim to have spoken to these beings?" he asked, skepticism dripping from his words. Jack nodded. "They didn't attack me. They didn't threaten me. They just wanted to talk. Whatever's happening now, it's because of fear on both sides." Hale leaned back in his chair, considering this. Before he could respond, one of his officers burst into the room. "Sir, we've intercepted a transmission. It's from the aliens." Everyone froze. The message played over the speakers, a series of tones and clicks, followed by a distorted voice speaking haltingly in broken English. "We mean no harm. Seek peace, not war." The room fell silent. For the first time, humanity heard the voice of another species, and it sounded afraid. The intercepted transmission echoed in the command center, leaving everyone stunned. General Marcus Hale stared at the speakers, his stern expression softening just slightly. For years, he had trained for scenarios involving extraterrestrial threats, but none of those drills prepared him for this. Aliens pleading for peace instead of launching an attack. The room was silent except for the hum of equipment and the distant rumble of military vehicles outside. Jack cleared his throat, breaking the tension. "That's them," he said quietly, looking at the general. "That's the voice I heard when they talked to me." Hale turned to Jack, his eyes narrowing. "You're sure about this? They didn't try to harm you or threaten you?" "No," Jack replied firmly. "They could have hurt me if they wanted to, but they didn't. All they did was warn me, not to be scared, but to be careful." Claire stepped forward, her hands trembling as she clasped them together. "General, please, if we keep attacking them, we're only making things worse. Look what's already happened. The fields are destroyed. Animals are scared, and people are running for their lives. None of that came from them. It came from us." Hale hesitated, glancing at his officers. Some nodded in agreement, while others shifted uncomfortably, clearly torn between duty and doubt. Finally, he sighed and leaned back in his chair. "All right," he said gruffly. "We'll stand down for now. But if they make one wrong move, "We're ready." Outside, Kale and his team listened to the broadcast of the ceasefire order with a mix of relief and apprehension. They had managed to send the message using a damaged communication device, hoping it would reach the humans before it was too late. Kale knew this was their last chance to fix the mess they had created. With Lyra by his side, he decided to take another risk. Under the cover of night, Kale approached the edge of the forest near the military camp. He deactivated his cloaking device, allowing himself to become visible. Soldiers immediately spotted him and raised their weapons, shouting orders. Kale held up his hand slowly, showing he meant no harm. His deep voice carried across the clearing. "I am here to speak. No weapons, only words." The soldiers hesitated, unsure what to do. One of them radioed General Hale, who arrived moments later. When he saw Kale standing calmly in the moonlight, his alien features illuminated by the glow of flashlights, even the hardened general felt a pang of awe. Kale bowed his head slightly, a gesture meant to convey respect. "We do not wish to fight," he said. "We came to learn, not to destroy." Hale studied him carefully, then gestured for his men to lower their guns. "Talk," he said simply. Kale explained their mission, their desire to observe humanity and understand its potential. He admitted their mistakes, acknowledging that their presence had caused fear and confusion. Then, as a gesture of goodwill, he offered something unexpected: access to Zorathian medical technology. Using a small handheld device, he demonstrated its ability to heal injuries instantly. A soldier with a minor cut volunteered to test it, and within seconds, the wound vanished without a trace. The demonstration left everyone speechless. Even the most skeptical officers couldn't deny the implications. This wasn't just advanced technology, it was life-changing. General Hale exchanged a glance with Jack, who gave a subtle nod. Slowly, the tension in the air began to ease. But not everyone was convinced. Back in the town, rumors continued to spread, fueled by fear and mistrust. Some believed the aliens were lying, that their gifts were a trap. Others argued that accepting help from extraterrestrials was dangerous, no matter how beneficial it seemed. Protests erupted, with angry crowds demanding answers from their leaders. As dawn broke, Kale realized the road to peace would be long and difficult. Humanity was divided, its emotions raw and unpredictable. Yet, despite the challenges, he remained hopeful. For the first time since arriving on Earth, he saw a glimmer of understanding, a chance to bridge the gap between two vastly different worlds. The days that followed were tense but transformative. Kale's demonstration of Zorathian medical technology sparked debates across the globe. News outlets broadcast footage of the miraculous device healing injuries, igniting both hope and fear. Some leaders saw it as an opportunity to improve lives, while others viewed it as a threat to humanity's independence. Governments held emergency meetings, scientists demanded access to study the technology, and ordinary people argued passionately on social media about whether to trust the aliens. In the small Montana town, Jack and Claire became unlikely mediators between humans and Zorathians. General Hale arranged for Kale to meet with a team of international representatives in a neutral location, an abandoned school gymnasium surrounded by military guards. The atmosphere was charged with tension as diplomats, scientists, and journalists gathered to witness history. Jack and Claire sat at the front row, their presence a reminder of the first peaceful contact between humans and aliens. Kale stood calmly at the center of the room, his tall figure drawing all eyes. Beside him, Lyra held a case containing several more of the healing devices. When the meeting began, Kale spoke slowly, choosing his words carefully. "We did not come here to conquer or harm," he said. "We came to learn. But we have learned much about your fears and your strengths. You are capable of great kindness, but also great destruction." A scientist raised her hand hesitantly. "Why share this technology with us? What do you want in return?" Kale tilted his head thoughtfully. "Nothing. This is a gift, meant to show our goodwill. Your species stands at a crossroads. With knowledge comes responsibility. Use this wisely, and perhaps one day we may work together." The room erupted into murmurs. Some were skeptical, questioning the motives behind such generosity. Others were moved, seeing it as a chance to heal divisions, not just physical wounds, but societal ones. Emily Dawson, who had reported tirelessly on the events, captured the moment perfectly in her next article. A fragile truce forms as humanity grapples with its first steps toward the stars. But not everyone welcomed the change. Protesters gathered outside the gymnasium, holding signs that read "No alien gifts" and "Protect Earth First." Conspiracy theories flourished online, claiming the Zorathians were manipulating humanity for their own gain. Among the loudest voices was a man named Victor Lane, a charismatic radio host known for his anti-government rhetoric. He rallied thousands to his cause, warning that accepting alien help would make humanity dependent and vulnerable. Despite the backlash, progress continued. Scientists worked closely with Kale and his team to understand the healing devices, documenting their findings meticulously. Doctors used them to treat patients with life-threatening conditions, achieving results once thought impossible. Stories of recovery spread rapidly, turning public opinion in favor of cooperation. Even some skeptics softened their stance when they saw loved ones healed. As trust grew, Kale revealed another piece of Zorathian technology, a small orb capable of purifying polluted water. He handed it to Jack during a private meeting, saying, "This planet is your home. Protect it, as we strive to protect ours." Jack accepted the gift solemnly, realizing the weight of the responsibility placed upon him. By the end of the week, global tensions began to ease. Leaders issued statements urging unity, emphasizing the importance of working together rather than succumbing to fear. It wasn't perfect. Mistrust lingered, and protests continued. But it was a start. One evening, as Cal prepared to leave Earth, he met Jack and Claire one last time. "You've shown courage," he told them. "Remember, the choices you make now will shape your future, and ours." With that, the Zorathians boarded their repaired ship and ascended into the sky, disappearing among the stars. Below, humanity stood at the threshold of a new era, forever changed by the brief encounter. The departure of the Zorathians left a void in the skies above Montana, but their impact on Earth was profound and lasting. In the weeks that followed, humanity grappled with the implications of what had happened. The healing devices and water-purifying orb became symbols of hope and innovation, sparking a wave of scientific breakthroughs. Researchers worked tirelessly to reverse engineer the alien technology, not to replicate it entirely, but to understand its principles. Schools introduced new programs focused on science and ethics, teaching students about the delicate balance between progress and responsibility. Jack and Claire found themselves thrust into the spotlight as unlikely ambassadors for this new era. They traveled across the country, sharing their story at conferences, universities, and community gatherings. Jack often spoke about the moment he first met Cal, how fear had given way to curiosity and eventually trust. "They weren't so different from us," he would say. "They made mistakes, just like we do. But they tried to fix them." Claire added her perspective, emphasizing the importance of listening. "We didn't know what to expect when we saw those lights in the field, but instead of jumping to conclusions, we asked questions. That's how we moved forward." Emily Dawson's reporting earned her widespread recognition, and she published a book detailing the events. Titled *First Contact, a story of fear and hope*, it became a bestseller, inspiring readers to think critically about humanity's place in the universe. Her work also highlighted the dangers of misinformation, urging people to seek truth rather than succumb to fear. But not everyone embraced the changes brought by the Zorathians. Victor Lane and his followers continued to spread distrust, arguing that dependence on alien technology would weaken humanity's resolve. While their influence waned over time, their concerns lingered in the minds of some, serving as a reminder of the challenges ahead. On a global scale, the encounter fostered unprecedented cooperation. Nations that had once been divided came together to address shared challenges, from climate change to healthcare. The United Nations established a special council dedicated to studying extraterrestrial phenomena, ensuring that humanity would be better prepared if, or when, another species made contact. In the small Montana town where it all began, life slowly returned to normal. The cornfields grew tall again, though the scars of burned soil remained as a testament to the extraordinary events. Jack and Claire often stood at the edge of their property, looking up at the stars. They knew the Zorathians were out there somewhere, watching silently, perhaps learning from humanity's response to their visit. One clear night, as Jack gazed upward, he thought about Cal's parting words. "The choices you make now will shape your future and ours." He realized how much rested on humanity's shoulders. For the first time, they were no longer alone in the universe. The knowledge was daunting, but it was also exhilarating. Years later, historians would refer to this period as the dawn of unity, a time when humanity took its first steps toward becoming a galactic civilization. It wasn't perfect. Mistakes were made, and divisions persisted. But the seeds of understanding had been planted, nurtured by the courage of ordinary people who dared to look beyond fear. As the stars twinkled above, Jack felt a quiet sense of pride. Humanity had stared into the unknown and chosen to reach out instead of retreat. It was a beginning, fragile yet full of promise. Whatever lay ahead, one thing was certain: Earth would never be the same again.